Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. So today we will be discussing mantra 1 of Īśopaniṣad. Īśāvāsmidam sarvam yat kinca jagatayam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjita magrada kasya svidhanam. Everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and one should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. So this verse is in the Anushtup Chanda, very familiar with. This is the Chanda meter for almost all the Bhagavad Gita verses, 4 lines of 8 syllables each. So we'll start with the summary explanation. So the first mantra, it proclaims the position of the Supreme Lord as fully independent and everything else being dependent on him, right? So this is, we are referring to the invocation over here, not necessarily the first mantra, but the first verse that we studied, where we talked about the Om Purnamada Purnamidam, how the Lord is complete and fully independent. Now, the Idam Sarvam points to the whole of the real visible world. Right? So, if you remember in the invocation, there was also the reference to Idam. Om Purnamada Purnam Idam. This. Idam literally means this, which is the material world. And there it was said that the material world is Purnam, it's complete. Here, the same point is being made again, Idam Sarvam. Look at this complete, visible, material world. So what do we look at? Yat kincha jagatam jagat. That all the moving and non-moving entities, jagat, which are held in this world, jagatayam. Ayam means the house. So that which is held in this jagatayam, this jagat, made of the moving and the non-moving entities, yat kincha, which is known through the statements of the scriptures. So one may see a small microcosm of these moving and non-moving entities, but the scriptures tell us about all of them. Things that are beyond our perception and beyond our comprehension. So, Yat Kincha Jagatyam Jagat is talking about all the moving and non-moving entities that we may or may not know but are spoken in the scriptures, Īśavāsyam. So, Īśavāsyam means that Isha is the Lord. And as I mentioned earlier, it's from this word that this Upanishad gets its name, Īśopaniṣad. So, Vasyam literally means that it is, so Vasya means to dwell in. So, Vasyam means fit to be dwelt in or covered, which essentially means that nothing moves without the presence or protection of the Lord. So what does this line mean? Īśāvāsyam idam sarvam yat kinchit jagatam jagat. That everything belongs to the Lord. Right? So Īśavāsyam means that the Lord is residing in everything, which means He is supporting everything, He is covering everything. Idam sarvam, everything that you that you see in this visible material world, yat kincha jagatam jagat. Right? Whether they are moving or non-moving, whether you are seeing it through your own eyes or the eyes of the scriptures, everything is Īśopaniṣad. Everything belongs to the Lord. So having understood this, what should one do? So the next two lines talk about that. Tena tyaktena bhunjita. The bhunjita means enjoy. Tyaktena means only that which is allotted to you. Allotted by whom? Tena. Tena means by the Lord through one's karma. Ma grada. Ma grada. Ma means no. And grada means to hanker. So do not hanker for anything beyond. Why? Kasya svidhanam. So kasya svidhanam literally means who is it? Whose is it? Contextually what it means is that don't try to enjoy anything more that has been allotted to you, because you know that it all belongs to the Lord. And so what is the verse saying? That everything belongs to the Lord, but out of his kindness he has allotted to you a quota for you to enjoy. Your perfection is in enjoying that quota. Do not try to enjoy beyond that quota, because you know very well that it does not belong to you. Actually, even the quota doesn't belong to you. But notionally you can say it belongs to me because the Lord has given it to me. But beyond that quota, the Lord has not even given it to you. So one should not enjoy beyond that. Right? So this is what we can say, more or less the literal translation of the mantra. So let's look at Srila Prabhupada's purport. So he connects this back to the introduction, and again a little bit of it is coincidental, because the introduction is essentially Prabhupada's speech in 1969, and these purports were written to him many years before that. But the fact that they're speaking about related topics also provides the continuity. So in the introduction he glorified Vedic knowledge, and here also he begins by glorifying the Vedic knowledge in the first two paragraphs. Then he speaks about how the Lord is the proprietor of everything in the third and the fourth para. He gives an example of one's own quota in nature, and then also example of one's quota of human possession in nature. Then another example of quota in terms of human diet. What is our allocated quota and what is not. And then he concludes by living according to the Īśopaniṣad principle. So this is a refresher. Prabhupada speaks about Vedic knowledge, and as we said, the Vedas are divided in four parts: the Samhita, Brahman, Aranakya, Upanishad. The Samhitas are for Grihasthas, and they are worshipped to various demigods, actually, mostly for Karmakand. The Brahmanas are for Brahmacharis, and they are prose texts for understanding the Vedas. Basically, how to get prepared to perform the Vedic rituals, what do they mean, so a more philosophical understanding of the rituals. The Aranakyas are forest texts, they're meant for the Vanaprasthas, and the Upanishads are talking about the absolute truth. So they are philosophical, mystical, meant for the renunciates. Now, in terms of the Upanishads, there are 11 prominent Upanishads, and this is declared in the Upanishad itself. That there are 11 ones. They declare 10, but the Upanishad that declares it is considered to be the 11th. So the Upanishads are the Īśopaniṣad that appears in the Shukla Yajur Veda, the Kena Upanishad that appears in the Sam Veda, the Katha Upanishad that appears in the Krishna Yajur Veda, then the Prashna Upanishad that appears in the Atharva Veda, then the Mundak Upanishad that appears in the Atharva Veda, then the Mandukya Upanishad that also appears in the Atharva Veda, then the Taittiriya Upanishad that appears in the Krishna Yajur Veda, Aitreya Upanishad in the Rig Veda, then the Chandogya Upanishad that appears in the Samved, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad that appears in the Shukla Yajur Ved, and then the Shvetashvatar Upanishad that appears in the Krishna Yajur Ved. Okay. This I'm not going to go in, I just put here for the sake of completeness of the various known, and this is by no means comprehensive. So the Samhitas, Brahmanas, Arnikas, Upanishads that are there in the various Vedas. But the point that I wanted to make here is based on the point made by Jiva Goswami in Tattva Sandarbha, where he talks about the various shakhas, right? So each Veda has different, they're divided into various subparts. Each of the subpart is further divided into these four, the Brahmanas and the Samhitas and the Upanishads and the Aranakyas. So he analyzes it and notes that there should be 4,520 between the Brahmanas, Aranakyas, Samhitas and Upanishads. There should be 4520 pieces of literature. Right? So this is because the Vedas are self-defining. Just like in the book you have a table of content, the Vedas have this table of contents. And then he looks at what are the ones that are known at the time. And this is 550 years ago. So of the 4,520, only 256 are known. Right? Now you notice in the Upanishad there are 220. So while there are 11 prominent Upanishads, there are many other Upanishads that are lesser prominent. Right? So it's not that we have only 11 Upanishads. So there are literally hundreds of Upanishads, which some of them are lost and some of them are minor Upanishads. So 550 years ago, of the 4,520 shakhas, only 256 were known. Right? So which means that 94% of the Vedas were lost. Less than 6% of the Vedas remained. So that's why Jiva Goswami makes this point that the study of the Vedas is difficult, because the Vedas have to be studied in their entirety. Like if I give you a book of 100 pages and I pull out 94 pages of it, it's difficult for you to comprehend what the book says by just reading the 6 pages. Right? So then Jiva Goswami goes on to say that, but what if there is another book that summarizes those 100 pages and that book is preserved in its entirety? And that is the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's why he talks about how the Srimad Bhagavatam is the stand-in for the entire Vedas, and even more glorified because it is more accessible. Right? So when we go to school, if you remember, we have these textbooks, and then we also have these summations of the textbook, and some of them are very expertly done, where in a few pages they will summarize many chapters. So by studying the summation, you can get an understanding of what the thick book says. That's what Srimad Bhagavatam is. That the whole Veda is summarized in the Vedanta Sutra, and the Vedanta Sutra is explained in the Bhagavatam. Right? So one might say that the Vedas might be lost, but the Vedanta Sutras are there. That hasn't been lost, but the point is that the Vedanta Sutra is very, very difficult to understand. So, really speaking, the Srila Vyasadeva meant it to be studied in conjunction with the Vedas. Right? So, on itself, they are very difficult to understand. The Bhagavatam, however, is freestanding. You can simply read it and get everything out of it. So, a bit of a detour, but since we are studying the Upanishad, I thought it would be good to address this point. So, further going into Srila Prabhupada's purport, he talks about the play between the who possesses what, between the jiva and the Lord. So the mantra says that Ishavasyam idam sarvam, that everything animate and inanimate belongs to the Lord. And Prabhupada expands this in the third and the fourth paragraph. And then he says one should accept only things set aside by the quota. And Prabhupada gives an example of how a cow produces milk, but it does not drink the milk because the milk is not its quota. The cow cannot say that this milk is mine, so I will not give it to anybody else. I will drink it. In fact, the cow will actually, so this is scientifically true, that if you make the cow drink the milk, they will actually fall sick and die because their digestive systems are not able to digest the milk. But the quota for the cow is grass. So the cow can take the grass, that's its quota, and it produces the milk, which is the quota for somebody else. Right. Similarly, Prabhupada gives the example of how we may build big skyscrapers, and then we say that we have built it. But what have we built? Everything, all the material that was used to build it was provided by the Lord. Even the intelligence to build it, even the energy for the endeavor is provided by the Lord. Right? So while we may take credit of using it, using what the Lord gave us, we cannot take credit of owning it. That would be a violation of the Īśopaniṣad principle. Then Prabhupada makes this wonderful point which gives us a contemporary understanding of the Īśopaniṣad principle in terms of how is ownership being shared, different models. So he talks about communism, which is artificial equality. In communism, it said everybody is the same regardless. And so what happens there is that the talent is not rewarded. So a person who is hardworking gets the same reward as the person who's lazy. So the hardworking person will say, what's the point? So everybody comes to the lowest common denomination, and everybody goes to the level of poverty because nobody is going to endeavor. Then capitalism is the second way of distribution where wealth determines power and position. The one who is rich is able to attain a higher position in the society. But what happens over there? That one who is wealthy will exploit the poor. And it promotes greed and insecurity and cutthroat competition. Right? So it is concentrating the majority of the wealth in the hands of the minority. And then the best, Prabhupada says, is Varnashram, where everyone is engaged according to their nature. Right? So Prabhupada says this is spiritual communism. That everybody is the same from a spiritual perspective. All the jivas are eternal souls. But there is material diversity. The material diversity is coming because these equal spiritual souls have occupied different modes of material nature. Right? So essentially the Varnashram talks about the Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. So that division is dependent upon the modes of material nature. Chaturvarnya Maya Shrestha Gunakarma Vibhagasha. Right? So the Brahmans are in the mode of goodness and Kshatriya in the mixed mode of goodness, passion, etc. So there is recognition of both. There is recognition of the fact that within the Brahman and within the Shudra, the same spirit soul is there. So that's the spiritual quality. And there's also recognition that the Brahmana is different from the Shudra. The modes are different. The Brahman is mode of goodness, Shudra is mode of ignorance, right? So understanding this similarity and difference, one can engage everyone according to their nature. So everybody is happy. Sometimes we think that the position of the Shudra is that they are exploited, but actually it's not. In a real Varnashram system, there are those people who are constitutionally happy in serving others and in being taken care of. And so the important thing with the Shudra is that they're always taken care of. And their function is to serve according to instructions. So that's what makes them happy. If you take a Shudra and put him in a position of a leader, then that would make them constitutionally unhappy. So Prabhupada also talks about quota in human diet, and this, as you can guess, Prabhupada talks about meat eating and vegetarianism, right? So there are people who are eating meat, and it's not the yat kincha jagatam jagat, right? It's not what is meant for the human form of life. And we can speak extensively about how the human form of life, whether it is from the physical aspect, the psychological aspect, the spiritual aspect, is not meant to eat animals, right? So so this is an example of meat eating, the example of violating the Īśopaniṣad, that the meat is not set aside as the quota for human beings. So one may say, what about vegetables? It's better, because that is indeed set aside as the quota, right? But still there is violence against plants, right? Sometimes people say that vegetarians are also killing plants, and which is true. But the counter argument to it is that yes, you're killing plants, but that is set aside as quota for you. Meat is not. So it is better, but still the acknowledgement is there. Even in eating vegetables, you're committing violence. So Prabhupada says the best is prasadam, where you eat vegetarian food, which is set aside as your quota, while acknowledging the Īśopaniṣad principle, which means that even this quota has been given to me by the Lord, so let me offer it to the Lord first and then eat it as his remnants. Right? So it essentially encapsulates both the aspects of the Īśopaniṣad. What has been set aside as your quota, and the acknowledgement of the fact that even that quota does not belong to you. It belongs to the Lord, but he has kindly given it to you. Right? So if there is a rich businessman, and out of compassion he might say to his relative that I have this house and I don't live in it, I don't need it, you can live in it. And so the person goes and starts living there. So the most fallen mentality would be that if he lives there and starts saying this is my house, I can do whatever I want to, and he demolishes the house or makes holes in the walls. So that's like the meat eating. Better it is that the person lives in the house and lives with it with the purpose that it has been given to him, and lives in a respectful way and lives for the purpose of living. The best is that he lives in the house respectfully while acknowledging that he's a tenant in the house and the house belongs to this rich businessman. So that is the essence of the Īśopaniṣad principle. So the conclusion is that everything and everyone belongs to the Lord. He sets aside a quota of the type and amount for every living entity. If I may say, where do we get this list of quotas allocated? And the answer is in the Vedas, in the scriptures. It's given in terms of various instructions. Right? So this can be determined from the instructions in the Vedas. So one should aspire to only take that which has been set aside as the quota, and at the same time acknowledge the proprietorship of the Lord. Thus, one should live according to Īśopaniṣad. So the Īśopaniṣad principle is essentially the basis of the Īśopaniṣad. So very important to understand this, because everything else, all the remaining 17 mantras are expansion of the Īśopaniṣad principle. Now, what happens to one when one lives understanding this principle? What happens to one when one lives not understanding this principle? What do they do? What do they worship? What are the consequences of that? So they are all centered around this mantra, the first mantra that enunciates the Īśopaniṣad principle. So with that, we end our discussion on of the first mantra and we will resume our discussion on the second mantra in our next class. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna.